the Curious Minds podcast.
Proudly supported by Accelerating Aotearoa.
This is a podcast where we take a problem.
In our case, it's the poo problem here in Otara.
That's right. When it rains, it floods poo.
So our team designed an AI-driven self-flying drone called the Flying Taniwha.
To take photos of poop in the water when it rains.
So we can own our data, to show our lawmakers, to lobby for change.
We don't think it's good enough that our local waterways are becoming too polluted to swim in.
So this podcast is about finding small solutions to big problems by having conversations with influential people.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of the Curious Minds podcast. Our guest today is two-time one-handed yachting gold medalist, Bruce Kendall. Hello Bruce.
Hello, how are you? Thank you.
I'm good, how are you? Would you like to do a little introduction to the camera?
Bruce Kendall, born in Papakura and shifted to Bucklands Beach when I was 5. My parents were tired of driving from Papakura to Bucklands Beach every weekend to go boating. And when we first shifted to Bucklands Beach, there weren't that many houses. And so I've been in Bucklands Beach since the 1970. And then from there I learnt to sail, learnt to swim and what have you, and all at Bucklands Beach. And got involved in windsurfing right at the beginning of the sport. And did most of my learning to windsurf at Bucklands Beach. And so I've spent a lot of time in the Tamaki River, and of course the water from Otara Lake ends up at Bucklands Beach. And part of my training I did in my windsurfing would be to sail from Little Bucklands Beach all the way up under State Highway 1 up to Otahu.
Wow, okay, so on the subject of yachting, how do you actually get into yachting?
Good question. My father was absolutely crazy about yachting and boats. Ever since he was born, he was into boats. He wrecked the Bath because he made little putt-putt boats that made black ring around the inside of the bath. And so he was just mad keen on boating. And so I didn't have much choice what I wanted to do when I was a kid. It was like, go with mum and dad on the boat. And and same with my sisters. And so they introduced me to yachting and racing. And when I saw windsurfing, I thought, there it is. There's the bare necessities. You don't need a trailer. You don't need to have to worry about undoing and doing up shackles with cold fingers when you're putting up the mast. And so, and faster, and you can play in the surf with it. So it's fantastic.
So in terms of clean water, how important would you say clean water is to your sport or like yachting in general?
Absolutely critical. And I recognise that yachting is probably one of the best sports that young people could get into, because you have to engage with the water at the water's edge. And that's the first place in the environment that shows signs of pollution, because everything washes off the land into the water at the water's edge, and you can see it, you can smell it, and you can taste it, and you can see if things are alive or dead. And of course it's much nicer to be in crystal clear water with fish swimming around and crabs and seaweed and things, as opposed to just brown mud and smelly stuff.
So it does influence does it influence you when you're sailing in water, if it's dirty or not?
As far as speed is concerned, no. But for instance, the Olympic Games in Barcelona, the Olympic venue was right, obviously at the water's edge in Barcelona, and it was right next to a big stormwater and sewage outflow, and we could see dead rats and feces and condoms and everything in the water around us, and the water smelled bad. And of course, when you're sailing, you're getting splashed in the face with it. So imagine being next to a toilet and having the water splash in your face. It's pretty gross. So you really don't want to do that. So I'm pretty passionate about having clean water, and I've also been very, very sick from bad water. I did a World Championships in Israel, and it rained one day, and we had big surf, and so I went out and I just went normal surfing, and I didn't know the water was bad, but I got very, very sick and I couldn't finish the World Championships as a result. And I lost 4 kilos. And when you only start off with 5% body fat and you lose and 58 kilos and you lose 4 kilos, I couldn't sit up and I couldn't walk. That's how sick I was.
Oof.
So took me months to recover, and I never got back to my true top physical form after that. So clean water, super important.
Yeah. I have one more question for you, but before I ask that, I just have to know, how does it feel winning 2 gold medals in the Olympics?
Well, I've won one bronze medal first in 84.
Oh, yeah?
And in Los Angeles, and then in 88 I won the gold medal. And with the bronze medal, I was actually the fastest person there, but I didn't have enough experience. So I didn't have enough funding to go around the world and compete against all the other guys and understand a lot of strategic things around the course and with the competitors. It's important to know your competitors. A little bit like boxing. If you know your competitor and you know what they're good and bad at, then you can adjust and try and take advantage of the situation. So I ended up getting disqualified in a race, and if I hadn't had that collision with the French guy, and technically he was in the wrong, but I had to prove that I was okay, and I couldn't because it was just him and I, and so I got disqualified. And if that collision didn't happen, it could have been a gold medal. And for sure, without that collision, it was a silver medal. So I was actually disappointed with the bronze medal. So, but I didn't tell anybody that because I thought that looked like sour grapes. So I really went hard out to try and win the gold medal at the next Olympic Games. And I guess I was so nervous about starting and being close to anybody that I'd start 10 metres behind everybody at the start and let them go, so everybody could see that I wasn't close to anybody, and then I'd pass them.
Cool.
And so it's a pretty neat feeling to come through the finish line knowing that you really clearly started last and you've beaten them all. And so I didn't have to sail the last race in the Olympic Games because we have one discard, and I was so far ahead on points, so I didn't have to sail the last race. So that was a neat feeling, and actually the best feeling was because they're all my friends, because I've done the circuit with them and I've known them for a long time. The best feeling was when they called out my name, Bruce Kendall, Olympic gold medalist. The cheer from my friends, all my athletes that I competed against, was the loudest cheer of all the Olympic ceremonies for yachting. And the whole Kiwi team cheered as well. And for me, that was the best thing. Not so much winning the medal, it was the cheer from my friends.
Okay, cool. That's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
And if there are any young aspiring sailors out there, this is my last question, by the way.
Yes.
If there are any young aspiring sailors out there who maybe want to, go to the Olympics and win a gold medal,
yeah, what
kind of advice would you give to them?
I'd say go to a yacht club and learn to sail. And there's lots of coaching available, and there's a fast track program if you're showing talent. Or Yachting New Zealand will pick you up and look after you, and away you go. So that's the pathway. Go to a yacht club first and learn to sail.
Cool. Well, thank you for letting me interview you. It has been great getting to know you a little bit better. And I guess I'll see you later.
Yes, great. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Bruce, before I get into the questions, just a little one. Do you have any cool stories about sailing or yachting?
Too many. I think one of the most interesting stories that you might be able to relate to was when I just started windsurfing. Like every summer holiday, we'd go away on our yacht, and we'd go away for 2-3 weeks, whatever. And I suffered really badly from seasickness. And so also being on the boat for all that time is kind of boring. And the plan that summer was to sail from Auckland down to Tauranga. So instead of being on the boat, I was on the windsurfer. So I ended up windsurfing first out to the Barrier, Great Barrier Island. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing was with that particular trip was the round the world Whitbread race, or the Volvo race. It just started, and so all the Volvo yachts were all smoking out to the barrier. And it was strong wind, and it was downwind, and they were really going fast, and I was able to zip around and have a look at each of the boats as they went past. And of course, they would have seen this windsurfer come out of the middle of nowhere, because we really were out in the middle of nowhere near Great Barrier Island. And a few of them knew who I was. So it was pretty cool to be able to say, see you guys, and off they went off down to Antarctica, around to Brazil. And anyway, I ended up windsurfing all the way down to Tauranga and back. Wow. And one of the neat things also was sailing from Tauranga out to Mere Island. And when you're doing long distance windsurfing by yourself, you're a long way from land a lot of the time, and seeing what's going on in the ocean is pretty cool. Like a lot of seabirds, they come and check you out because you're so different, and dolphins, and the scary thing is being chased by sharks. And of course, if you're on a windsurfer, it's pretty small, and sharks go surprisingly fast. They didn't hit me or anything, but I had some spooky moments. So that trip made me a lot stronger than all the other windsurfers in New Zealand at that time on that equipment. And that gave me my first leg up, so that when we had our first Olympic trials, I was fitter and stronger than them, and I won every single race of the trials. And it was the first selection trials to go to the pre-Olympic regatta in Los Angeles. And so it was pretty neat to do that, and so I managed to achieve that at 17. And so my 17th year, I had a couple of months in America competing. So that was a neat experience, and I didn't realise until afterwards how important that trip down to Tauranga and back. And if you look at it on a map, it's quite a long way.
And I can imagine the build up to the Olympics would be like big for your first time going there. How was it for you? Were you nervous or?
Interesting question. The strategy to win in yachting at the Olympic Games is go there and enough times in the years before at that season, so that you know what the weather's going to be like. So you go and learn the venue. It's a little bit like a golf course, but it's always changing. A golf course is always the same, or a rugby field's always the same. But for sailing, it's changing all the time. And the trick is to know better than the other sails where the wind's going to be coming from as it changes, or the direction of the tides and what have you. So in Los Angeles, for instance, during the day, the wind always slowly turns right. So in the race, you want to go right, because that's the best direction to be. So you want to be on the right-hand side of the fleet. So it's understanding the strategies of each venue. And so going to Los Angeles, for instance, I was there for 3 months before the Olympic Games, and I trained 6 hours every day on the water, and that's without a harness. So imagine trying to hang on your arms doing pull-ups for an hour and then play a game of chess at the same time, and that's kind of like what I was doing.
Wow. What have you sort of been doing after the Olympics? Like, what have been your life milestones?
Interesting question. Lots of milestones, but after I stopped competing, I was in demand to be a coach. And so I've sailed all around the world, but I think I've had, in many ways, a more interesting experience being a coach around the world. So I was the first non-Chinese person to coach Olympic yachting in China. And it's a strange experience to go to China and be there for a month, and the only person you can talk to is your interpreter. And so you have to live your whole life through the interpreter. So if you want anything, that person is the only person that can achieve it for you. And then the weird thing is coaching. And of course, imagine being on a boat, and it's noisy and it's windy and it's rough, and you're trying to get ideas across to the athletes, and they're on the water on a windsurfer, and it's noisy and it's windy and it's rough, and you're trying to do that through an interpreter that doesn't understand the sport. And then you watch and see what happens, and then you try to figure out if the sailor has got the wrong instruction from the interpreter, or they just didn't understand. And so I've done that a lot of times. I've done that in Korea, in China, in Japan, Indonesia, India, South America, Canada, mainland America. I've done coaching all over the world, and it's been a fantastic experience and met some amazing people.
Wow. So you have some connections or part of the Howick board. How did that start?
Oh, good question. As a kid at Buckland's Beach, Little Buckland's Beach was a long beach all the way from the southern end to the northern end. So I could walk on white shells the whole way. And then at one stage, Auckland Transport wanted to protect their road, and so they built a stepped stone wall to protect the road. And what that did is it created a backwash, and it washed away all the sand. And so it's ended up just being black rocks and mud and oysters growing on the rocks. So half of Little Buckland's Beach is gone in my lifetime. And so and also there's other problems at Big Buckland's Beach, which is on the northern side of Granger's Point. And Granger's Point is the rocky yacht club or hard stand area in between both beaches. And I looked at the whole coastline from Little Buckland's Beach to the top of Big Buckland's Beach, and I thought, how can I make these better? How can I get them back to what they should have been like before humans got here? And so I did a presentation, and that went through to the Howick local board, and we had 300 people turn up, and the head of New Zealand's coastal erosion team said it's the best presentation he's ever seen from the public, and if he had known I was offering those solutions, he would have had another presentation to back that up. And basically what I was saying is it just needs more sand, and we need to put systems there on the beach to stop the sand migrating along the beach. And so anyway, nothing happened, and so I got frustrated, and so I stood for the Howick local board to try and fix the beach. And so I've been chipping away at that ever since, and hopefully during the next term we'll be able to get some result.
Cool. Well, those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I'm sure someone else will take over now, but yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
So I was listening to the other interviewers, and they brought up some interesting points for me in terms of questions. So I heard that you mentioned about your Little Buckland's Beach. Could you put yourself back into being a young child and just tell me how the water looked like?
The water quality, and as far as clarity is concerned, was not that different, actually. And I think a big problem that the whole of the Tamaki Estuary and Otara Creek, the whole lot, has faced is housing intensification and building. And of course, every time it rained and the earth is exposed, all the mud washes down in the Tamaki, and of course, silt kills everything, because everything with gills needs clean water. Yeah. And of course, if you've got mud in your gills, you can't breathe and you die. So that's everything. It's all the shellfish, it's all the crabs, it's all the fish. And so I've heard stories that at one stage a lot of the sides of the Tamaki Estuary was sand.
Wow, that would have been beautiful, right?
And now it's mud and mangroves, so it's pretty sad. I understand from the latest measurements from the Tamaki Estuary that the water clarity is a lot better than it used to be, and that's because they're controlling building practices a lot better. And so they've got silt traps and all sorts of things. So the education is better, but there's still people making mistakes, and the fine for somebody not following the building codes and not using silt traps is only like $1,000. It's not that much, compared to the damage that they do. And of course, once the silt or the mud ends up in the Tamaki Estuary, it will never come out. And out in the Hauraki Gulf and many places, the silt out at sea is over 1 metre deep. And it's pretty sad. You can't fix that. And then, of course, there's all the chemicals that are washing off from the roads. And zinc oxide is one of the biggest pollutants in the Tamaki Estuary. And once it's there, you can't get rid of it. and it's pretty sad. So in some ways, we're fighting a losing battle, but we are making progress, and we are having new initiatives. Like I'm co-chair of the Tamaki Estuary Environmental Forum, and that's given me a wonderful opportunity to work with a team to introduce water quality sensors, so we can measure the temperature and the electrical conductivity, so that we know if pure water measures 0, and any sorts of salts or silt or chlorine or anything in the water can get measured by the sensor. And the sensor puts the information out on the internet, and I get an SMS to my phone if the electrical conductivity at a sensor gets over 1000. And that gives me the opportunity then to go to that site and take a water sample if I want to. If it's looking really bad, I can call the pollution hotline immediately, as opposed to waiting for some random member of the public to be walking along going, oh, look at that, maybe I should tell someone. So I know straight away. And the problem is with a lot of these pollution events in our fresh waterways is they happen really fast. There's no warning that it's going to come, and goes through, kills everything, and then once it's happened, there's no smoking gun. You can't actually tell where it came from because it's flushed through, and all you see is the dead eels, etc. So getting these water sensors into the water to have an early warning system is much better, so that at least we can go straight to people and go, hey, we've caught you, and try and educate them as to what they should be doing.
Yeah, and that's all about. It's holding a lot of accountability to most of these people who's causing this pollution.
Yeah.
And I heard you talk to one of our interviews about you having a presentation. Could you go over some of the ideas and plans that you had come forward to the board?
Sure. Well, as co-chair of the Tamaki Estuary Environmental Forum, I recognised a lot of the people actually had never been on the water in the Tamaki Estuary. And of course, I've got a boat and belong to Buckland's Beach Yacht Club. And so with them, Buckland's Beach Yacht Club provided a boat and a driver, and I bought my own boat, and we took the members of the Tamaki Estuary Environmental Forum up the river, and so we could see things like erosion that's happening on the banks because boats are going too fast and the waves are washing the banks away. We saw birds roosting on the boats, so white-fronted terns. Of course, the whole of New Zealand was a bird colony before humans came, and we've kind of made it impossible for them to be on the land anymore, and so the white-fronted terns are nesting and living on the boats moored in the Tamaki Estuary. And of course, it's pretty tough for them. We saw big colonies of red-billed gulls living under the old Panmure Bridge. And so they'd found some area where they were nesting and it was safe for them. We saw lots of derelict boats that were derelict, which is bad because eventually they'll sink and cause another kind of pollution. If they've got an engine, the petrol or the diesel or the oil will go into the water, but the birds are living on these boats, which is kind of neat. So that shows that we should be trying to create artificial bird roosts so they can have a place to breed and a safe place to sleep. And we also saw evidence of some developments where they had pushed the soil into the intertidal zone, and so that was creating silt runoff. They hadn't followed their resource consent for their building activity. We also saw evidence of fly dumping around the place, where people had just dumped a whole lot of rubbish off their property into the river, and we were able to call the pollution hotline, and that was sorted out. We went all the way up Pakuranga Creek up to Cascades Falls, and saw a whole lot of rubbish, and that triggered a stream cleanup at Cascade Stream, and we got a team together and pulled 20 supermarket trolleys out of the stream, including car batteries and tyres and bicycles and plastic and glass and all sorts of stuff. So it was neat. And then during that time I was able to see some big eels. One was as thick as my thigh. It was pretty exciting to see. But I would have liked to have seen more eels. I think there was only, I would have expected to see maybe 3 or 4 in that the stretch of stream that I was in, but I only saw one. So and that's a problem too, because I think that people are fishing in the streams and catching the eels, and these eels, of course, we know that they don't reach sexual maturity until they're about 40 years old, and then they swim up to Tonga or New Caledonia and breed, and then of course they come back to New Zealand and swim up the stream. So really special creature, eels.
Yeah, I learned something new about eels because I never knew about that, and how the cycles work and their breeding scenes and whatnot. And coming back to, you mentioned about your water sensor. As we all know, technology is always rapidly changing.
Yes.
And this comes to my final question, which is, what sort of improvements would you do on the water sensor that would help us?
Fantastic question. Thank you. I understand that you have that the idea for me is to have the water sensor network connected so that people in the know are going to be, everybody can get an SMS to their phone as soon as there's a problem in any of the waterways, and then somebody can go there with a drone.
Yeah, Flying Taniwha.
Yeah, and use the drone to find out where the pollution is coming from, because that's the missing link. And I was speaking about this very idea last year, that we should get some drones for teeth, so that we can try and find out where the water sensor, where the pollution is. So if you have a GIS map, you can see all the underground stormwater drains, you can see all the overland floodplains, and so you can go to the water sensor, go, right, it's happened here, and then you can put the drone up and you can use your maps and you can try and find out where the pollution is coming from and get onto it quickly. So I'm thrilled to hear about your Taniwha project, and I really hope that we can link the two programs together and really get things going.
Absolutely. And because I was thinking about this when I was talking to Troy, it's all about collaboration, and as a community, both communities can come together and make something big and beautiful. So
that'd be fantastic. I'll be absolutely stoked. I mean, it's my dream to see freshwater crayfish back in our streams, and right now I know it's not clean enough. They need crystal clear water, so eels can survive in some pretty bad water, and soap and kokopū actually, so the white bait, they can live in some pretty bad water, but freshwater crayfish, they need crystal clear water, and that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. Once again, thank you so much, Bruce. Like water and humans, we both can learn from each other, and it flows through, and basically as a cycle we learn from each other, and like we did today, we learn a lot from each other, from the two interviewers and myself. Once again, thank you so much for this interview. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned as much as we did today.